Respect me lion alive.
Give thanks, give thanks, give thanks. You could hear me good, Deetra?
I hear you loud and clear.
Give thanks, give thanks, give thanks for being here, everyone. Greetings, my people. Greetings to everyone. We're tuned in here on this very live presentation, what we're dealing with tonight here. Just want to give a few minutes here for my people, give people a chance to sign on. Remember, I said that Sea Smoke is here every Wednesday night. Okay, with Sea Smoke, that is G Mike, Mr. Joe, and the team. They come on here every Wednesday night starting 9 o'clock Eastern time. That would be 7 o'clock Belize time. So make sure so that you tune in every Wednesday night for Sea Smoke. And then on Friday nights with Samurai, you have Sea Smoke 5.0, and them come on at 8 o'clock, which is 6 o'clock Belize time zone. So make sure so that you support us. In this case, Sea Smoke, Give Thanks CY. You're going to be hearing Give Thanks throughout this broadcast here this evening, so that we just want to make sure so that you get used to that, because we is the Give Thanks crew. Then we always are very, very grateful, especially to them and those who support us. So we are very, very grateful for that. All right, so give it a little time there, because we're supposed to be in touch with Joshua, but I have not heard from him so far right now. So I'm going to give it a little time, so that once we get started, we keep flowing and keep moving forward ever, backwards never. I also want to let you all know so that Bluefields, we are also live on Bluefields Radio, bluefieldsradio.com. That is Bluefields Online Radio. And Bluefields Online Radio do things like Rasta Reggae Talk, Creole Talk, which comes on. Rasta Reggae Talk is a program that comes on every Saturday night starting 8 o'clock local Moskitia time. And it's a motivational program. It's a program full up with information, with a lot of motivation towards especially Creole people, for us to get up and do what it is that we need to do, especially in this time where we live in, which is very, very crucial time for us as a people all across what you call the Western Caribbean, from Belize all the way down to Panama. All our people out there on the coast, we's African people, Creole people, and that is the main objective of Rasta Reggae Talk. And then also on Thursday nights we have Creole Talk, which is the name itself say it, Creole Talk. And this is a more talk program where we just have conversations with different people. We usually bring in historians. One of our main topic that we does always talk about is mental health. That mental health is something that is very, very, I would say, very present in the time where we live in. And I think that we as a people have to learn how to deal with certain types of things when it comes to mental health. I think it could help everybody to be able to could get in touch with those type of information. So Creole Talk come on midnight Eastern time. That would be 10 o'clock local Moskitia time, 10 o'clock Belize time. So make sure so that you tune in. That is Bluefields Online Radio. That is Bluefields Online Radio. That is the radio station that we just come over. It's a radio station that sometimes broadcasts live also in Bluefields on a local radio station. And we come on in Bluefields, we come on online, and we are ever present, and we are always looking on ways how to reach our people. I think when it comes to media, we have to find ways of how to dominate and reach our people as best as we possibly can. You know what I mean? So that our people can be connected to what is taking place around the globe. So many things that affect us, so many things that transform us, so many things that need to really and truly connect with us, So once again, give thanks to CY, give thanks, brother. Well, we're going to kick off, because we are here to do our work, and we have to be diligent in our work, and we're going to move forward. All right, so give thanks. So greetings, my people, and welcome to Moskitia. All right, give thanks and welcome to Moskitia. Sowing knowledge, cultivating the nation, Moskitia Nation. Give thanks for being here this evening, my people, and for being a part of this most historic moment, which will be the inaugural, meaning this is the very first celebration of Moskitia's National Day of Education and Culture. Okay, this day starting today going hold a deep meaning for we as a people, as a Creole people, as a Moskitian people, as our Moskitian nation, my people. Today, my people mark the 286. Okay, get that. Put that note down somewhere. All right, that 286 anniversary. That is 286 years of this most remarkable time in our history, our present, and also our future. It was in 1739, 286 years ago, my people, when His Majesty King Edwards, okay, King Edwards, Moskitian King, along with Captain Thomas Porter and Captain Jacob Everson, and what them do is them did issue out a bold and a visionary appeal, which inside of it, I quote, it says, not only for weapons of war, but likewise for tools of enlightenment. Okay, not only for weapons of war, but also for tools of enlightenment. This means that Moskitia was supporting the British Crown at the time with war, with weaponry, with soldier, you would say, sailors, you would say, had a very, very strong navy, if you want to call it that, at that time. This just means that in that time, we as Moskitian people was supporting the British and water top, against the Spanish, against even probably the French at that time, and defending Moskitian territory and defending British interests at the time. So for that reason, the king at that time did, as a visionary, did come to know, so that we not only need weapons, but we also was looking forward to getting educational knowledge, tools of enlightenment, not only tools of war. Their request was to the British Crown, and it was clear for provide education, for provide guidance for Moskitian peoples. Okay. Very, very important thing that we have to take into consideration as we hear what it is the request was. You understand me? That they was looking for education, because in that time, think about, you're talking about 1739. Think about where the world was at that time. Think about where the United States was at that time. Think about where the Caribbean was at that time. And think about the disadvantages that indigenous people and African people had at the time. And for indigenous people in this part of the world, requesting for education for a people, for a group of people, looking how to govern themselves and educate their nation so that them could be in competition with what was going on at the time. So these is the kind of things I think sometimes we take for granted as a people. This is the kind of things that we take for granted. We're not really and truly looking into our history. I don't think we digest these kind of things the way how we should digest it, because it's kind of like far-fetched for we to think, that at that time you had a king. And a lot of people think say the kingdom of Moskitia was a kingdom that was a pawn of the British. But a pawn of the British not going to be looking and seeking for education for their people at the time. So these things is things that we have to take into account. And as we said, this was a appeal of purpose and an early and deep commitment for uplift Moskitian society through learning, developing virtue for the people, and also faith, as we're going to learn. And as we reflect tonight, my people, on this enduring legacy, we're going to take a moment also to honor our beloved Moskitian son, and this is another part of our program here tonight, so that have a lot of meaning for us as Creole people. So we're going to take a moment for honor our beloved son of Moskitia. Later on, we're going to announce, who this person is, and you're going to want to know, you're going to want to know about this person. You're going to want to know about this very, very honorary Moskitian citizen, because his life and his achievements wrap up in the spirit of this very day that we are celebrating today. Like I said, his life was a life of devotion, because he was devoted to learning, devoted to education. And I think that even now, these are examples that we should adhere to. And as I always do say, not in the sense like, say, education sit down in a classroom with a teacher in the front, which is a traditional way of education. But education meaning today, the time where we living in today, embracing education mean to learning, but learning for what? Learning for exactly what it is that we're learning. Are we learning with the kind of teaching that is motivating us to want to be self-sufficient? And when we say self-sufficient, we're only talking about economical self-sufficiency, because at the end of the day, you have many countries around our region that are self-sufficient economically, but morally, they don't have no kind of sufficiency, much less self. And this is the kind of things that we have to take into when we're dealing with education. And when we look on our history, when we overhaul our history, and we go back through the pages of history, we see the moral standard of our people was highly, highly elevated. And for whatever reason, there are forces out there who always try to diminish it. They always try to make it look like if we was always some backwards people, and they bring in all kind of different things, race, for example, something that is so dysfunctional as a race is, and this is that's why I said is reasons why a nation at that time was seeking education for our people, not gold, not riches, not silver, but education. And as we continue tonight, you're going to learn, how important education actually was towards the development of Moskitia. So this brethren had a life devoted to learning, service, and the affirmation of our cultural identity, which I think that as we talking here tonight and discussing, I get a reflection, and that's what this night is for. It's a night of reflection. It's a night of this type of reflection. And this reflection, my people, leading me to think that I always say it, that why is it that education itself can't be our culture? Why that in itself, why it have to be education and culture? Why isn't it education, culture? And I think that is the culture that we should transform ourselves around, a culture of education. Put education to the forefront, put learning to the forefront of everything what we're doing. And learning in the sense like from planting seeds in the ground to building skyscrapers. You know what I mean? In that kind of sense. Technological information, healthcare information, all of these things, how to even take care of ourselves. Because if we're talking about self-sufficiency, then we have to accommodate our education accordingly. So when we're talking about education, to me, I'm thinking it across the board. So education culture is what I am suggesting. As we continue, as we mark this day, very, very day, a day like a day when Malcolm X was born 100 years ago, my people. How significant is that? 100 years ago, Malcolm X was born. And Malcolm X is going to be here with us for at least another, I would say another 500 years, accompanying us and making sure so that we are able to could get up and walk on our own. Remember, said that Malcolm X's father was a strong UNIA member. Also, we're going to learn that the brethren who we're going to honor tonight and recognize was also a UNIA member. So the Universal Negro Improvement Association, the Universal Negro Improvement Association has played a very, very vital role, even as we here sitting down here talking. It's not no coincidence that we are gathering here today. And this is our version of celebrating even Malcolm X's birthday, a man who educated himself behind prison bars. How powerful is that? And if it wasn't through education, not only education, but self-education, which is a principle of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. So how valuable is that to the day? I pray, my people, that this evening going to inspire thoughtful reflection, heartfelt dialogue, and a renewed commitment for a future rooted in wisdom, heritage, and also integrity, my people. Well, continuing on with our program tonight, Joshua, our brethren Joshua, who we haven't heard from thus far, pray so that, he's safe wherever he is. So I am going to go ahead and, conduct the part of the program where he's supposed to be, talking about. So I pray so that momentarily that he join us, and we're going to continue with our program, my people, because this thing is forward, ever backwards, never. Once we decide to make one step forward, we can, looking for the gear and can't find it. The clutch have to be there, the gear have to go down, the gas have to press, and we have to move forward. So give thanks, my people, give thanks. Remember, so that you could share this with people, share it with loved ones, so that people could hear this very good news that, that we are marking time right now. We are branding our history here this evening. So give thanks, my people, give thanks. All right. So if Joshua was here, Joshua would say something kind of like, commemorating the inaugural National Day of Culture and Education. Distinguished guests is what Joshua would say. Okay, fellow citizens of Moskitia and friends around the world. Tonight, we stand not only to celebrate, but to remember a moment when vision pierced through hardship and hope was declared in the voice of a king. And this day, 286 years ago, our sovereign King Edward, joined by Captains Thomas Porter and Jacob Everson, addressed a remarkable letter to the British governor of Jamaica, representative of the British Crown in these parts, meaning this part of the world. That letter, dated May 19th, which is on this day, 1739, was more than a request for weapons of war. It was a call for education, for moral guidance, and for the transformation of our people through knowledge and virtue. King Edwards asked not only for commissions and arms to defend his country, but also significantly for a schoolmaster to educate the young and for books to enlighten minds. His words, they were very plain, dignified, and urgent. A good schoolmaster to learn and instruct our young children that they may be brought up in a Christian faith. This appeal is what we are honoring here tonight, my people. King Edward asked not only for commissions and arms to defend a country, to defend his country, but also significantly for a schoolmaster to educate the young. Very, very powerful. This letter was the first formal expression by Moskitian leadership of a desire for institutionalized education. It was the seed of a national vision rooted not in conquest or dominion, but in wisdom, learning, and virtue. I want to take a little time out for people to come to an understanding here. And that's why I say, sometimes when we talk about these historical things, we are mentioning this historical moment. Think about where the world was at the time. We take for granted, we think that school is something that always has been in existence. You know, where was education in what was education like in 1739 in the United States? Think about that. Think about that for a moment. Institutionalized education was not a reality until deep into the 1800s. And that is worldwide. And these kingdom that people like, that's why the disrespect towards our history, you know, and we is the one who have to elevate our history. We is the one then we have to express our history in the kind of way to make it count, you know, to give it value. We is the one them who have to do that. We are tasked with that mission to the day. This is our work. Because when we look and say, and we take into account, compare a time in history, you know, that a king that did know said that there was a big disadvantage for him and his people in the time and moment that he was living. But as soon as the moment come, when the moment appear, you know, him requests for what? For knowledge, for schooling, for teaching the children them in Moskitia. Because him did know at that time that that is the only thing that could advance a people. Because yes, it could be good that you could have a strong army. A country could have a strong army. But if you don't have moral guidance, if you don't have education, then what are you really going to be defending? What are you going to be really defending? You know, is there any defense when it comes to ignorance? Can you defend ignorance? Of course you can defend ignorance. You could defend anything. But what does it mean when you are defending ignorance? Think about it. Think about it in our everyday life. Think about it in our communities. Think about it in the world where we live in today. There is a lot of defense out there right now where people are defending ignorance. You know, what does it mean to be ignorant today in this time? Ignorance in 1739 is not the same thing as ignorance in 2025. The same thing too. Education in 1739 is not the same as 2025. You know, the outcome of that appeal, remember we're still talking about the appeal now, the appeal towards the governor of Jamaica. The outcome of that appeal, and keep in mind, we as people, we as Creole people, the relationship between we as Creole people from Belize to Panama and Jamaica. Keep that in mind, okay? The outcome of that appeal, though slow and fraught with challenge, was profound. The Society for the Propagation of the Gospel, or SPG, okay, recognized the request. All right. So this SPG, my people, is this propagation of the gospel is a organization of priests in the United States in this time that was going around helping the colonization of, say, for example, the United States and different places all over. This is a tools that was being used on indigenous people and African people. Okay, keep that in mind. The Moravian church play a very, very serious role in this. Okay, so the SPG recognized the request, and in 1742, it was laid before that society by Reverend Joshua Peet. And over the following decades, a succession of missionaries, among them Nathan Prince, Thomas Warren, Reverend Shaw, Christian Frederick Post, most notably, and others, them labor to carry out the vision that King Edward had ignited. Okay, you request for education, you get education. Yes, the efforts were uneven. All right, the efforts was uneven. That's why we have to go back to thinking in the time in history we're dealing with today. That was 1739. Which indigenous society at that time in this part of the world was requesting education on their own? You know, which indigenous, which African society in the moment? You know, and that's why when it comes to our history here and this part of the world, I am very, very open-minded as to where this educational value come from and why certain kind of things was happening with we, especially in this part of the world. Why we was living on a piece of land that was never conquered by, especially the Spain. And again, we have to go back in history and think about what was happening in, say, for example, 1492 in that time, right before the so-called transatlantic slave trade, right? What was happening in Spain during this time? Remember now, Spain did just win over the Moors and take back their country, take back their land from the Moors, after almost 700 years of rulership from the Moors. Now, the Moors, we don't know the history of what was taking place in the world during this time, like the navigational history, for example. These people was navigators. You're talking about even 700 years before that in the kingdom of Mali. People was traveling. We hear stories that Mansa Musa, they sent out over 200 vessels to this part of the world. And that's why we learn and we continue to learn. And as we learn, we're going to share and we're going to discuss and we're going to talk, because that's not really the topic here tonight. But when I think about where this spirit come from, even the spirit, what is in us to the day, because this here is a spirit. It's not a physical thing. What move we? Why is it certain people get some knowledge and not only get the knowledge, but also inspire enough to want to pass on the knowledge? So when I see these things, then that's what I look on it as, a spirit, a spirit that transcends time and space, and is the reason why we are here then. But who is responsible for bringing this spiritual knowledge? And we're not talking about like in the religious order, or we're not talking about in a belief in certain supernatural whatever. We're talking about a spirit of knowledge, a spirit of education. Where did that come from? Is it possible that maybe indigenous people could have been counseled by people that come from other development around the globe, and they could have counseled themselves and say, hey, let me tell you something. You see these people, and we're going to be coming, you have to be smart how to deal with them, because they're going to kill you out. You understand me? How is it that we survive? How is it that these set of people them survive? And we not survive easy. You understand me? We never survive easy. It wasn't an easy survival. But when you think about our stories and you hear it all the time, you hear like somebody in Belize would say, oh, my great grandfather come from Moskitia, in such and such a year in the late 1800s, cutting log. You understand me? And there was here and there was working and this and that and all kind of things. Some communities, even in this part of the world, completely disappear. Completely wipe out. You understand me? And we somehow survive. And not only survival like how the indigenous people survive in the United States. No, we survive autonomous. We survive standing up on 2 foot. Even though it was like when we study with history, we realize, that it wasn't an easy survival, but we somehow survive. But is it possible? Maybe just a like I said, when you read and you study, it gives you them kind of inclination. Then was it possible that there was some counseling from other developed nations at the time, coming from the kingdom, the Mali kingdom, or coming from the Moors? Who knows when they're escaping and running away and going wherever it is where they're going? Is it possible that this could have been a reality? I most certainly leave my mind open towards this suggestion. Yes, the efforts were uneven. Yes, many of those sent were met with hardship, illness, war, and even death. Yet the Moskitian people remained steadfast, requesting instruction, welcoming the missionaries, and even sending their children abroad to learn. Christian Frederick Post, the most enduring of them all, would remain with our people almost until his death in 1785. He preached, he baptized, opened schools, and laid the spiritual foundation for generations. He was in fact the first Moravian missionary to arrive in Moskitia on the 25th of June in 1764. And still, we must acknowledge this. King Edward's 1739 appeal was not merely a footnote in missionary history. It was a declaration of Moskitia's sovereign initiative. It proved that our people were not passive recipients of colonial intervention, but active agents shaping their future, choosing British alliances, seeking education as a path to empowerment, and grounding their nationhood in both spiritual and civic development. This is why tonight we inaugurate this day as our National Day of Culture and Education, to honor a king and a nation that dared to prioritize learning in the face of uncertainty. We do not forget the trials that followed, but we affirm the spirit behind the words. We humbly beg leave to title ourselves your true subjects and loving brothers. Today, we carry that legacy forward, not as subjects, but as heirs to that vision. Let this day renew our vow to educate, to uplift, and to stand in dignity, just as King Edward did 286 years ago. My people, as I read these words, that Joshua write here for us this evening, is the same reclamation what we're making, is the same inspiration what we talking about. And I feel that in this time where we live in today, if we cannot use the tools them, because nowadays we have all the tools. I don't think there's going to be a time in history where we're going to have as much as tools as what we have today. I don't think so that there is going to be a time in history, where we're going to have the amount of tools where we have for could do what we need to do as a people. We have everything that we need nowadays. We have it all, and I think it's time now that we use our intelligence. Now it's time now for we to use our intelligence. If we think about how things was maybe 100 years ago, think about the difference between transporting on a ship, sailing on a ship. Okay, sailing on a ship, and think about when telecommunication is just starting to develop. Think about the difference between them two things, the disparity in that. Think about maybe 100 years after that, when you're talking about radio communication. You understand me? And then you have television communication. And in every one of these instances, you had people that rejected the technology. You had people that welcomed the technology. And amongst we as a people and amongst our society, these things was something where you can reach, where you can touch. You could use it, you could watch it. Like, think about 50, 70 years ago. We could watch television, but we can't produce our own television program. Now to the day, we could produce our own television program. Just like right now, this is a television program in that sense then. You see what I mean? Television, something that was invented for propagating knowledge and education. Okay, that's what television was invented for. That was the purpose of television, was to educate people. You know what I mean? So what I'm saying with that now is that we don't have no excuse nowadays. So nowadays we have to see how we could do to use the technology where we have, to see how we could do to uplift our people and to disseminate knowledge. Sometimes we just turn around and looking around and things and seeing, say, that how is it that these kind of things happening and what is going on and what is this and what is that? You know why these things them happening? Because we not come up with the formula yet to solve these problems. And that's why they're happening. And that is in every instance of everything where we're doing. So it's we who is tasked with this work. This is our job. And I think it's time now that we take back, we slow down, use our intelligence, and see how best we could get through, the times where we live in today. All right. Give thanks, my people. Give thanks for taking this first step with us here this evening, in recognition of the first Moskitian National Day of Education and Culture, which I would suggest education culture. I always believe in that strongly. Education culture, This year's theme is sowing knowledge, cultivating the nation. I have to keep on saying give thanks. Give thanks to CY. Give thanks to this very chaos, because CY have we on Instagram. I don't even have an Instagram account. We're on Facebook and we're on YouTube. So give thanks to CY. Give thanks for this very prestigious outlet that we could use. Give thanks also to Joshua Sambal. I pray so that Joshua is safe and everything is good with him, because it's not like him not to show up like this then, So I just want to say give thanks. That would have been his words here this evening. I would pray so that maybe he would catch up with us, before it's time for us to end. So this year's theme, which again, give thanks to Joshua, sowing knowledge, cultivating the nation. The Moravian Church, even though them did establish them first church in 1849 in Moskitia. That's when the Moravian Church was established. And we have to come to understand how important the Moravian Church, the role that the Moravian Church did play in the development of Moskitia, the educational development of Moskitia is something that we cannot ignore. And sometimes when we're studying colonialism and we're thinking about certain kind of things, the way how it happened, and we have a tendency to burn out, to burn out and purge out certain kind of things that was taking place. But sometimes I think that we have to put ourselves in the shoes of our people in the 1700s and in the 1800s, before we can even reach to the point of judgment. But either way, the Moravian Church did play a crucial role in the development, in the educational development of Moskitian people throughout our history, and we have to be very, 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 very grateful for that, I think. So in 1849, following the arrival of Heinrich Gottlob Pfeiffer and Amadeus A. Reinke, them was the two brethren, them were come from Jamaica, and May 2nd, them arrive in Moskitia. They landed at Greytown in Moskitia, which is south of Bluefields. All right. And they wasn't the first missionaries to reach our Moskitian shores. Just as how we was learning just from what Joshua did write, and I was mentioning the arrival of Christian Frederick Posey in 1764, which is 83 years before what would that be 1847. All right. So 83 years before that. And I just want to put this out there while you are in tune here, is that this knowledge here, what I'm talking about, is not taught in our history. You understand that? It's not our children. We never learn these things them in school. We never learned these things in school. As far as we know, in March of 1849, the Moravian Church was established, and that's it. That's when they reach. They don't talk about how they reach, through which road they come, through which boat they catch. They don't talk about them kind of details. And I think those details nowadays, especially now that we could tell our stories, the messages in the details, then, because that is how we're going to put a human element to our story, is in the details. When you hear that maybe, this historical figure, their mama was a person that used to like cook Johnny cake and serve fish to people in the neighborhood, and these the kind of details. These details are very important because these is the details that connect we as a people. And that's why I'm telling you, say that we have to find all kind of ways how to tell our stories, to connect our stories with each other. Because it's only so we're going to be able to get past and get through and do what we need for do as a people. Very, very important as how we tell our story, and how what did give Malcolm X power in his speech, his ability to connect with the people. And why him could connect with the people is because him used to live all the life them from the gutter all the way, criminal, thieving, drugs, you name it, him was in it. And when it come for him time for talk, him could connect with the people. And that is what ended up making him so dangerous in that time. When we go back to a man like Marcus Garvey from in the 1920s, my people. Imagine if Marcus Garvey had the tools that we have today in putting together the Universal Negro Improvement Association. That's why sometimes I look at the situation as we sleeping, man. We are on vacation. We're not doing nothing. You understand me? Think about 1920s, the technology back then, and Marcus Garvey was able to put together the biggest African movement on the earth. Still to this day, we have not surpassed Marcus Garvey. We not surpass him up to this day. what we doing? That's what I always question. What are we doing? Sometimes people say, them need for sleep 8 hours and all kind of thing. I don't know, I'm not sure about that. All right. So just as Joshua would have been mentioning, my people, that Christian Frederick Post in 1764, 83 years before, did reach Moskitia. These details were proven to be very important today as we understanding better our story, our Moskitian story. Following the 1786 Convention of London, there was an agreement between the Kingdom of Spain and the Kingdom of Great Britain, which part Britain did agree to evacuate the British settlers them from Moskitia to what would have become British Honduras, where to the day is sovereign and independent Belize. This is why today, more than ever, our Moskitian connection is forever one with Belize. Take it over, Deetra.
Good afternoon, everyone. Excellent introduction and presentation there, Ariel. So I'm going to pick up where you left off with that evacuation going into Belize. It happened between March and July of 1787. It was between 2,207 and 2,214 individuals who evacuated to the Belize settlement. But backing up a little bit, I want to emphasize who His Most Majesty's King Edward was. He was a Moskitu king, as you pointed out, Ariel. And contrary to belief, Moskitu kings had power to organize and advocate for their people, as you highlighted. Another treaty that was signed was the Friendship of Alliance in 1743, where the Moskitu, again, King Edward requested marriages between indigenous people, the Moskitu, Negroes, coloreds, with shoremen. So that again shows that this was not a forced arrangement or one of forced colonization, but there was an alliance between the British and Moskitu. As Joshua pointed out in his notes that you read, this was forward-thinking advocacy with vision, especially considering for the people to be educated. Most people today with some sort of power or influence, they're not willing to share information because information essentially is control. But looking at King Edward, he was educated in England, and no doubt he witnessed how crucial education was for societal advancement. I'm not sure if I'm freezing up here. Give me one sec. Okay. I'm not sure if I had froze up. Okay. So King Edward was educated in England and no doubt exposed to a different world. He saw the importance of education and how education can be used to advance society. What he would have also witnessed when he was in England was how the church and state connected. And in a way, religion or the church can provide a moral compass for some, or groundwork on what to aim for in life. So the church would have provided some sort of grounding guidance to the people, which he acknowledged. I think it's also important for us to note that our history is not rooted in forceful conquest and dominion. This was that collaborative effort with King Edward and Britain through the governor of Jamaica, Edward Trelawney. Going back to what that church society was, the SPG, it was the Society for the Propagation of the gospel in foreign parts, or an offshoot of the Church of England, specifically their missionary organization, which was founded in 1701. The primary goal of this mission was to send Anglican clergy to British colonies to share both missionaries and literature, which would strengthen the church's presence in the region. But what's important to note is, going back to that time of 1739, the literacy rate. This is also a time when there were no human rights. Most humans were viewed as commodity or replaceable, disposable. Slave trade was going on with both indigenous people and Africans. There was servitude also happening for those who may have owed money. Women at the time were also discouraged from being educated. They were told that it's not needed for them to learn how to read. So what the church did by bringing literature and these missionaries, and with King Edward pushing, is they taught coloreds, the very small white population, and the enslaved how to read. And what this did was it encouraged people to read, and also formed an appreciation for the church, in addition to people getting baptized, and also marriages being encouraged between settlers. So just from my personal research, there is a missionary in particular by the name of Edward Lewis, who is listed on many of our ancestors' baptismal records who were once on the Mosquito shore, and specifically areas of Black River, Musty Creek, in that northern part of those English settlements. He was doing baptismals, and those records are archived in Jamaica. Some of those familiar grassroots surnames on these baptismal records are Myvett, Burrell, Cadle, Whitehead, and Tucker. The SPG also reinforced our connection to the early New England colonies. Contrary to belief, we tend to think that our connection was more with England. But in going back to 1739, before the American Revolutionary War, those New England colonies were considered an extension of Britain. And many early ancestors had ties to those early New England colonies, which included areas such as Boston, New York, Newport, and Pennsylvania. I also want to note that the Moskitia under King Edward in 1743, it was in 1776. A law was passed, or an act before the law, an act was passed to prevent evil practices against indigenous people, specifically slavery of indigenous people. Act was finally passed into law in 1824. So the Moskitia played a crucial role in banding the slavery of indigenous people in the region. And because of this connection with Britain, they were able to write letters to Britain directly to get this law enacted by 1824. In 1770, the mission, or the SPG mission, noted that there were 3 main British settlements on the Mosquito shore. Again, that was Black River, which had smaller communities such as Musty Creek, Cape Gracias a Dios, and Bluefields. They also noted in 1770, so this is before the evacuation to the Bay of Honduras, and also before Moskitia received refugees or those who fled the 1779 ambush of St. George's Key, a lot of people fled to the Mosquito Shore for safety. And then right after and during the American Revolutionary War, some British loyalists, they became refugees of the war. They were kicked out of America. They were first sent to Jamaica and then the Mosquito Shore. So before this happened in 1770, the SPG mission noted that there were a total of 1,400 British inhabitants. But here's the part to analyze. Out of those 1,400 British inhabitants, only 1 out of every 7 was classified as being pure white. So these British settlers, the majority of them were either Creole people or of mixed ancestry, sharing Mosquito heritage. Some were listed as musty, which meant that they had one great-grandparent of African descent, or they were of African descent. Going back to where you left off, Ariel, in 1786, the Convention of London Treaty sparked that evacuation of the inhabitants of the Mosquito Shore to the Bay of Honduras. Those people settled mainly in an area called Convention Town in the Belize, in the Bay of Honduras at the time it was called. Some of those familiar surnames that are famous today in Belize are the Flowers family of the Flowers Bank 14, Crawfords, both of which those families were once in the Bay of Honduras before going to the Mosquito Shore, then being evacuated back again to the Belize settlement. My surname, Gillett, was one of those evacuees. I mentioned Myvet earlier, Cadle, Traps, many grassroots families that are particularly in the Belize River Valley. They can trace their heritage to this evacuation. And again, these people were not necessarily only in the Mosquito Shore. Many of them had been in the Belize settlement prior, but due to Spanish invasion, they fled to the Mosquito Shore for safety. Going back to Pastor Post, he noted that the Mosquito mission, right before he left, was not being maintained. And the mission then focused upon building an Anglican church in the Bay of Honduras after those evacuees left the area. And that Anglican church became known as St. John's Cathedral. And we know that from our history that this very church was where Mosquito kings were consecrated or crowned. Discussing this history in depth, we understand why. Another church that also came to the area of the Belize settlement was the Baptist mission that arrived in 1823. And something that I found very interesting in my research was that this Baptist mission not only had literature in English, they also educated people on how to read, but they were translating literature within the Belize settlement, Bay of Honduras, in Mosquito. And I just found that very interesting, especially knowing that in the Belize River Valley, there were words that we grew up saying, not knowing the origin, just thinking it was made up. And then coming to realize that they were actually, or are actually Mosquito words that our ancestors picked up. So that's all I have to share for now. You can take it away, Ariel.
Give thanks, Deetra. Give thanks for that. You could hear me good, right? You could hear me good? Yeah.
You're perfect.
All right, give thanks. So. Give thanks, my people. Give thanks for continuing on being here on this very, very, very important, very important moment in our history. I say, John Foreman said, "Thank you." Okay, thank you, John Foreman said, "Thank you." And like we said, it's a very, very significant moment for us as Moskitian people. because we are on a journey that we can't turn back from. And so we have to be very careful as we step forward, and as we move forward, step very cautiously, reviewing our history. Greetings to the panel. Give thanks. Amaro Inca Khan, give thanks. We're very grateful to have you here. And so we have to be very careful as we step forward and we move forward, carefully going back and looking into our history, taking in everything as much as we could, so that we could teach the youths them and teach the children them. And I have a tendency to say that it's not even these present youths them is who we're going to be teaching, but it's the youths them we're not born yet. Them is the one them that we are preparing for. I have faith in that. That is what I standing on. That these are the children them that we are preparing for, because it's about a new nation. It's a new nation of people, a different kind of nation, a nation we no exist yet on this earth, because there's plenty things happening we never yet been before, and that's why I tell you, so that I have a feeling sometimes that we take a lot of things for granted. We take a lot for granted, and we have to be very, very careful with that to the day. All right. So we're going to get into our honorary recognition tonight. Which for every one of these recognitions, that we have. And we are going to be recognizing Moskitian holidays, throughout. This is just the first one that we are recognizing right now. I like to tell people to say that the way how a nation was built in time gone by, is not the same way how a nation going to be built in the future to come. These is things that when this United States empire fall apart, for example, which is something that will eventually happen, just as every other empire on earth throughout history. What going to be the next empires? What going to be the next nation then? How these things is going to be, put together? We don't know these things then yet. Really and truly, we don't know them. We don't know how this is going to take place. And I think that as Moskitia is the doorway to that future. Because many times people ask me, I go on different podcasts or different moments, and people would ask me, certain kind of questions. It make it look like, so we're like, maybe you're crazy or something. Then, like, what this guy talking about? Then? Which world is he living in? Then, you know what I mean? And they would ask me, how is this going to happen? And I would tell them straight up, I don't know. I can't sit down here and tell you step by step how this is going to take place. I just know that it's going to take place. But why I say these things is because we never know how these nations them was. You think that when the United States was formulated as a country, they didn't know what was going to be taking place in 2025. They didn't know that. They probably didn't even know what was going to be taking place 10 years. They probably didn't even know if they was going to win the war, against the British. Remember, there was like, who would go up against the British Empire at that time? Think about that. You know what I mean? A bunch of immigrants, a bunch of subjects, as how they would have been called. You see. But whatever it is, they keep on. The founding fathers, they keep on. We is not the founding fathers of Moskitia. We have original founding fathers. But one thing what I notice and what I say is that them did see it important, them did deem it important, especially for document everything what they was doing. They know so that they had a big disadvantage in the moment. Them they know so that they had a big disadvantage at that time. So they make sure so that they document every single thing where they could have document. And that's why to the day, those documents are still, they are archived in Belize. They are archived in the United Kingdom. They are archived all over the United States. And is our responsibility. Whether they get rid of these things them nowadays, that's a crime against humanity to get rid of these things them. Okay, you can't do them kind of thing them no more. At least those laws still there and protecting. And so that's why there is where we have to get these information them, get all of these things them, and put them in perspective. You understand me? And like how this brethren Steve Trapp saying, exactly, they made alliances. They never have no other option and no other choice in that time. And they had to be smart the way how they was doing it to survive and to keep on surviving so that we could be here today still talking this. Because trust me, when you're talking about these Central American country, they do all what they could have done in their power for get rid of all our information. But how them know say that? Them did know say that. Maybe the British wasn't the best friend, but at the time, it was the best friend to store the information. If we did store these information, they mean places like Managua or Tegucigalpa or any one of these places, then Guatemala, these places, then where them think them would have be. You understand me? So it's these kind of things them that we have to take into consideration and look into things, think beyond what it is what we're thinking today. And that's why I know so that the new way for building nation of the future is not going to be the way how it used to be 100s. Impossible. It can't be that kind of way no more. It have to be a different kind of way. And we is the one them we're holding the door, to make this happen in this time. So honorary recognition tonight. Give thanks, my people. Give thanks, my Moskitian people. Give thanks for being here. We are very appreciative that you're taking time out to be here and sharing this moment with us, which for us as Moskitians is more of a historical, is more of a personal thing for us then. This is just we're doing this for ourselves, to be honest with you. Like we are really doing this for ourselves to make sure so that we even have the ability to could do this, And as we step forward, then, we step together, we step more united and, bring in and more people get on and move forward with us, So we are very, very grateful for the ones who are here this evening and taking the time out to share this with us, and this, like I said, this is the very, very first step. And so feel honored to be here as we honor our Moskitian son tonight, as we continue with our program tonight here, my people. Moskitia National Day of Education and Culture. Sowing knowledge, cultivating the nation. So we reach to the part where we're going to recognize Lowell Thomas Hudson, MD, medical doctor, known as Thomas. Okay. So Mr. Thomas was born in Bluefields, Moskitia, on the 6th of June in 1930. His father was Mr. Carlos Alvin Hudson, and his mother was Gertrude Zeraida Hudson. When he was 3 years old, he began to live with a grandpa, a man by the name of John Ordman Hudson. And he was a local leader in the local lodge hall. That's his, I don't know, them was the kind of organization them that people used to belong to in those days, the lodge hall, secret organization, And he also was a member of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. This Mr. John Ardman Hudson, I know of him through a man that is married to my auntie, this is Mr. Envoy Hudson, which would be the brother of Mr. Lowell Thomas Hudson, you see. And so I always interview Mr. Envoy Hudson, Mr. Envoy Hudson, he's in his 80s now to the day. And it may be even in 90s, I'm not even sure. But one thing about Mr. Envoy is that he's very sharp. He remember everything. And I think that as we get older, we does have a tendency to remember, our memory go farther back, than when, like you can't remember where you leave your key, but you could remember, the old people them from when you was 7 years old, Prince Hall Lodge, yeah, things like that, But yeah, so Mr. Envoy, him, when you sit down and you talk to him would tell you everything where you used to go on. So him is a man that I interview a lot, I sit down and I record him, and listen to his story them. And him would tell me that his grandpa, Mr. John, that him could remember, at that time he said he never really understand the importance of even being a part of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. But he said that him could remember when his grandpa, Mr. John, used to put on his uniform. He used to put on his uniform and parade in the street, because they used to have a UNIA parade. Now you have to think now, if this is like in the 1930s, you understand me? This is in the 20s, 1930s coming up. Between 1930 and 1940, they used to still have parades, UNIA meetings. They used to still have UNIA parades in blue fields, all over, because as a matter of fact, the Universal Negro Improvement Association still have a chapter in Lemong, in Lemong. Down in Lemong, they have a active chapter from since then. And he would talk about, how Mr. John used to put on his uniform and walk. He said his grandpa did leave the church, he leave the Moravian church, because that was, him had enough of that. But that's when he dedicated himself to the Universal Negro Improvement Association. So I was able to relate to that story in that kind of way, and to personally talk to somebody where they'd actually know Mr. John then, and to see how things was in these times in our community. That's why I said, for us to connect those kind of stories, make it a little bit richer, so that when we share it with the younger generation, they're not quick for go scroll on their phone. Then we could engage them, or maybe we kind of find a way how we could put it in the scroll. Then there's some little thing there. Then so his grandpa did insist on, meaning Mr. John now did insist that Thomas, start out his learning with passages from the Bible, introducing him to the importance of spirituality, which was instrumental in his development and even through his life. You have to understand, say, people were coming from our community now, them was very, very religious in this time, Going back to Mr. Envoy, I remember Mr. Envoy would be telling me, say, him grow up when he was like from 3 years old, 4 years, he was on the farm, farming rice, and that's when they come and tell him, say, all right, that's it. When he reached like, say, 5, 6 years old, that's it. No more rice farming. You have to go to school now. He said, the only thing what him didn't know from him small was farming rice. He never know nothing else, But like I said, going back to the education and the importance of education, because them did understand, so that the only way to move forward in that time was to educate the youths. Them imagine if that wasn't the case for we as a people, my people. Think about that for a second. Think about the disaster, what that would be for we as a people if we never get educated, if our parents, them, our grandparents, our great-great-grandparents, them never see to it that education, because we're not saying, say, it was the right or the wrong kind of education or whatever kind of education it was. The thing about it is that the importance of it at that time, and that is what bring we to this today. Imagine if education was not included in it. Just think about that for a second, you know. And as you think about that, think about this. So his grandpa did insist on Thomas starting out learning with passages from the Bible, introducing him to the importance of spirituality, which was instrumental in his development and through his life. By running errands in Bluefields, young Thomas, at 8 years old, was making enough money. Okay, was making enough money for pay his own school fees, his own education, as he did recognize the importance from in that time. He did know the importance of education. His first teacher them was Mr. Vernet Hudson Sr. and Mr. Lenny Colson. Okay, them was his first teacher them. When he turned 13 years old, his grandfather, Mr. John, all right, Mr. John Ordman. And you know, one thing that does fascinate me, you know, Deetra, I don't know if you see the same thing too, but is the name them that our old time people them used to have. You know, like we know sometimes we don't even know the real name then, because there is a woman who raised me, for example, and all my life I know her as Mama Fora. But how we always looking ancestry and different kind of things like that. We ask people then, you know what Mama Fora real name was then, and her real name was Vifora. And she was a Rama from Rama Key. And I you wondered how she get this name, where this name come from, like which parent come and say, okay, this child going to name Vifora. Like what kind of name this is then? It's not a common name. It's not a name where you hear every day. You hear Mama Fora, that's a name where you could recognize then Mama Fora. That is, everybody know Mama Fora. But her real name was Vifora. Where that come from? How would they come up with these things then? But yes, so Mr. John Ardman, right? So when he was 13 years old, his grandfather, Mr. John, said that young Thomas was serious about his education. And so his grandpa decided to take over his school fees. Take over. I remember now, running errands in Bluefields, paying for his own education. You understand? I remember 8 years old, I gonna work for my grandpa when I was 8 years old. That's my first work in my life. And what I used to do was, my granny used to sew clothes. Used to sew dress and shirt and pants and make clothes then. So them, I don't know, well, I'm sure it's the same thing in Belize. So, say the high house them, we live in the high post them. And so you have a flooring, and in between the floor them, in between the board them and the flooring board, you have a little space. So then when she used to sew, the thread and the cloth and the pieces of thing when she's sewing used to get stuck in between the floorboard. So then my grandpa hire me now, 8 years old, if I go underneath the floor and clear out them spaces, them clean it out, then you understand me. So I could relate, like I said, you could relate to him now, 8 years old. Now when I get my pay, I never gonna pay school fees or none of these kind of things. Then. You understand me? I gonna buy food and carry food home then to show mama say, well, you see, I a man now, then I could bring food home, you understand? But now, not here, not Mr. Lowell Thomas then. Him take his money now and him gonna pay for his school fees. When he turned 13 years old, now his grandpa said, this little boy is serious about education. So I going to pay for his school fees then. Okay. So he was serious about his education, and so his grandpa decided to take over his school fees them. And he registered him at the primary Moravian school. Okay, the primary Moravian school. Now, thing that you have to understand about Moskitia and history is that when Nicaragua invade Moskitia and take over invade Moskitia, take over Moskitia, occupy, still to this day is an occupation. They closed down the English speaking Moravian school in the year 1900. It was until 1910 is when the school opened back up again for functioning then. You understand me? And when it opened back up now, it opened back up for teaching Spanish. You understand me? Start teaching Spanish and trying them best to eliminate our language and eliminate the connection that we have with our Creole, especially Creole language then. And so when they reopen back up again now, think about this now. That's why we always have to go back and think about things in the way how it should work then. If you close down a school, think about what could happen in 10 years. 10 years, you know. You understand me? Of not being educated, education freeze, education stop for 10 years. Think about that's a damage to the community, a damage to the people. And so this, when you think, so in 1910, school was opened back up again. And so by this time now, they never have no high school in 1910 because, you know, when you start back up school, now you're starting with children, little small children going into preschool and first grade and second grade and so on and so forth. You see, so it's going to take you a time now, at least a good 6 years to reach the sixth grade or sixth form or however it is that it take, you know, and then so on and so forth then. You see, so education was again being reintroduced to the community. And this time now, when you're coming back now, you're learning in Spanish. So then now is another challenge for our children. Them like, think about now, Mr. Lowell this time now, going to school now, learning Spanish, you know, and being there, being educated with a Spanish subject. The only advantage that we had back then in them time then is that the teacher them was Creole teacher. The teacher them was black people. You understand me? So we still had that kind of connection. It wasn't like, say, well, then bring Spanish people come teach we then. You understand me? Yeah. Belizean or Creole with definition is native. So yeah, we've been there, not been no slave. Yeah, that's a very good thing to remind people of. Yeah, man, definitely. All right. So yes, my people. So then the Moravian Church did play a fundamental role throughout his teenage years. And by the age of 17, he did join the church. From 1948 to 1952, he did attend the Moravian High School, where he did graduate first in his class. Okay. Right after high school, Thomas did gone to the mines. The mines is where they used to mine for gold. You know, they had three mines in the north of Moskitia, where Nicaragua was extracting our natural resources for years. Okay, and so right after high school, when he graduated high school, him did gone up in the mines, gone teach primary school in one of the mines. Then we named Bonanza. Another one the name Rosita, and I think the other one, I don't remember how the other one named. So from 1953, he did continue his studies at the National University in León, in Nicaragua, where he did graduate in 1961 as a medical doctor, a surgeon. Also, I never mentioned that it was first in his class. I don't know if I did mention that. It was first in his class when he graduated out of high school. So that's just show you how education and what route him was going, how far him was looking to go ahead in his life. So from 1953, he did continue his studies at the National University in León, where he did graduate in 1961 as a medical doctor, a surgeon, a first Creole, the first Moskitian Creole to graduate from that university. Now, another thing where people have to come to understand and comprehend now is that when people was in Bluefields, remember now, Moskitia is not part of Nicaragua. Okay, Moskitia is not part of Nicaragua. So there's a major city. Bluefields was a lot more developed than the biggest city in Nicaragua. Okay, in the late 1800s, you know. And so, but no road was connecting between Nicaragua and Moskitia. There was no road. You had to go up the river. You know, they had one river there. And you have to go up the river, then you somehow find a way. So when him was going to school now, this is the first Creole to graduate from the university. And you hear some stories, some people used to walk for days just to get to the capital. That's how, when our people wanted secondary, I remember now, they break off ties. When them take over now, they break off ties with Jamaica, because our people used to go study in Jamaica, or go study in Belize, or go study anywhere else. Now they cut off that. So now we have to go, we now have no other choice. We have to go study in Nicaragua now. And sometimes you have to walk all day and night and through swamp and mud and all kind of thing, just for go seek your education. You hear the story them all the time. So sometimes you have to put these kind of things in a little perspective then, to know the challenge them that people have to go through for get educated. That's why we cannot make education be something where our children take for granted. We can't keep on saying that the children are not interested in the education. We have to figure out a way to make them want the education. Just like how back in them time, them didn't know say them they want the education. Amaro, the same colonial education gave us the keystone tools to use against the system of repression. The English education standards, although not perfect, was better than the other colonial powers. Yeah, Ariel said, yeah, definitely, you know. Yeah, man. So that is something where is being said, you know, and that's why we have to learn. We have to take what we have and make the best of it now and see how best we could disseminate it to the youths. Them, it's very, very key and essential in our development to the day. So while he was waiting on his general medical exam, he did accept, the calling of Father Charles Davis of the Anglican St. James Mission for helping the establishment of the first medical clinic in Carn Island. Okay, now Carn Island is a small island of the coast of Bluefields, and like 30 miles due east of Bluefields, a little bit northeast of Bluefields. And him did go on there, gonna start the first clinic. Okay, the first clinic on the island at that time by a Creole person. Take into consideration now, my people, these is not histories that is highlighted to our people even right now. You see, these little history them. That's why sometimes these little details them that we have to dig up. We have to bring these things to the forefront and bring them so that our people could understand, so that our very own people was shaping out our future, but they was interrupted. And it's kind of strange to see. That's why it's amazing how the brethren said that, you know, the same education system, we use the same educational system and we take it and formulate the plan. But the constant interruption from Central America, for example, the constant interruption from places like Nicaragua and place them there, you know, where cause we to just keep on being stagnant. And today we are at an advantage today as Creole people. We are at a very high advantage right now, as we are connected everywhere in the world. And this is something where we have to use our distance is our strength. You understand me? What unite with is what? Creole is what unite with. But our distance, that is our most powerful element where we have to the day. We just have to learn how to could use it. We have to learn how to could manipulate it. You know, these is things that we have to figure out how to use, but it's not a weakness, my people. It's a strength. You know, and we have to figure out ways how we could use it. So he started the first clinic in Carn Island. Dr. Thomas did continue his postgraduate studies in the United States and then returned into Carn Island to install the public health station. Imagine the man going back to his community. Gone back to his community. All right. In 1974, he did take up residency in surgery at the Brookdale Hospital in Brooklyn, New York. Okay, the same place where he did do his internship. All right. So that is the story of Mr. Lowell Thomas Hudson. Okay. A man where take education and establish himself. You know, when you think about these things, then eventually the education in the community, the educators them at the time during 1960s coming up, 1970s around this time, the people them who was the educator them in Bluefields, for example, they start figuring out and start seeing say that when we educate our people, they leave the country. They say they leave in the country. So then now them had to figure out how they could change the education system for make the people them not have to leave the country. How we could take these youths them and make them exploit the resources that we have, the seen and the unseen resources. And so they started developing an educational system for that. There come another interruption now, because we're going to get into next problem and next war and foolishness, and then destroy that altogether. You know, we're not going to get too deep into that history, but what I'm trying to tell you here now is that so now these things, then we have all these resources them out here, for example, where's our children and we go to school out here. You understand me? And them studying out here. So how is it that we could use them? How is it that we could formulate a plan, an idea? I could use these resources now to develop ourselves and to develop our people then. I don't know, but there has to be a way. All right, so today in celebration of Moskitia's first National Day of Education and Culture, we honor Dr. Lowell Thomas Hudson. We're supposed to, again, one other man was supposed to join us here, Mr. Umberto Hooker. He was supposed to be joining with from San Andres this evening. But I don't know what happened then. It's just when everything happened, and this is the reality then, But so him was going to give us a little, because what happened now is that Mr. Berto in San Andres, people used to go to Bluefields to go study, to go to high school, because in San Andres, maybe they had primary education, but they never have secondary education. So then the people used to send their children to go study in Bluefields. That connection always was there, because we used to trade with San Andres all the while. Remember, San Andres was a part of Moskitia, but when the United States wanted to build a canal, then Panama Canal, Colombia make a deal, them take away San Andres Islands. That's why San Andres Island belong to Colombia today, and separate us as a people, because then Colombia and Nicaragua still to the days enemy, and so because of that now them broke off that tie, you see. But meanwhile, we were still using the transportation, the trade between the places. And so if you have a family, from San Andres and somebody in Bluefields, then you would send your child and they would go there go study. So when Mr. Berto, as a little boy, him they gone to Bluefields gone study, him used to live with Mr. Lowell. He was living with Mr. Lowell and his wife. He would if he was here tonight, he would be telling me stories like, when Mr. Lowell was in Cairn Island working in the clinic, his wife, him had to carry Mr. Lowell's wife to the hospital for gonna have a baby with, accompany his wife then, because he was a little boy, 16, 17 years old. And he was there living in the house. When you ask him about Mr. Lowell, he said, Mr. Lowell is my papa. That is how intimate then, you understand me. Mr. Berto would be telling us now about Mr. Lowell, but well, unfortunately, he's not here this evening. So we miss out on that. But we find a way how maybe we're going to interview him at some point and post it somewhere so that people could listen to it, you know. But definitely he was supposed to be here, but for whatever reason, maybe the connection across the sea can reach them, you know. And so for finalize, we're just going to have a little quick open discussion and talk about the present and future importance of our National Day of Education and Culture. You know, the present and future importance of our National Day of Education and Culture. And I'm going to start off this part by saying that I am on a journey. Okay. I am on a journey. And I have to say I, because at this level where we are right now is each man for himself then, in this kind of way. You understand me? Like, and I think it's important that when we starting to build now, we build with this kind of principle and this kind of idea. You know, we're, you know, relying on one leader or one person, and that everyone involved of whatever kind of movement that we are in, that we don't have that kind of reliance on one person. You know, look at Malcolm X. You know, when they kill Malcolm X, everything just fall apart. And so we have to become different type of revolutionaries today. You know, and this principle of putting somebody out front and on the forefront is something that, like, it's like we get used to it. And I think they even shape our minds in the kind of way, like, say, well, you know, like people waiting on Jesus to come, or somebody waiting on a prophet, or they're waiting on somebody to come do something. And so we have this tendency to keep this kind of principle then, that somehow we're waiting on something to happen. And I think that we have to kind of like start to shy away from that kind of idea now. I think that today we have to start walking and moving, not as individual in the sense like, say, just for yourself or yourself alone, but to take up the struggle, you know, and do your part then, and focus on your part and do what it is where you have to do. Because if each and everybody do what they're supposed to do, we don't have no problem. You understand? I mean, nobody, then we're not going to have no problem. It's like if you're going in a boat and you have everybody who for paddle have to paddle, who for hold the sail have to hold the sail, who for captain need for captain. You know what I mean? And so everybody need to do their part. Everybody need to do what their responsibility is. Then I think that is so that's why I say that you know, in this moment where I say my part then, what I doing, and that's why I say mine's. God, this is my, for me, this is the first step towards Moskitian Declaration of Independence. You see, so I don't know how far we're going to have to go from here until Declaration of Independence. I don't know how far that is. It could be 10 years. It could be 100 years. I don't know how far it's going to be. It is not even my responsibility to know how far it is. It's not even, I can't even worry about how long this is going to take. All I know is that I am here at this foundation. I know so that I am, this is the idea in the boat with the first step. And so that's what so for me, when we're talking about the recognition of these holidays, then, because that's what these is holidays. And so what it means for me is that first step. And it just turned out to be this way because there is other days that we are going to be recognizing. In July, we have days that we're going to be recognizing. In September, there are days that we are going to be March and so on and so forth, you know. So there are days that we are going to be recognizing. And in these days, you know, every one of them, we have to make our effort to go ahead and recognize, because when we recognize these days, we are not only recognizing the days them, but we are recognizing the days them that are connected to Moskitia, and making our country more real, more relevant, and more actual towards people, and making people understand what it means and why we are here. So that's what this, beyond the part of the education, and I am overjoyed and glad that it happened to be education, because I will always put all my money on education. You know, I is not a person who does bet, because I am not a lucky winner when it comes to betting. I learned that from a very young age that when I go bet, I lose. But if I was a betting person, I would put all my money, everything on education. That's something that I would do. And like I said, we have to move away from the idea that education is what it used to be. I think that we don't even know how education is going. Just like how we don't know how the nation them going to be built in the future. Just so too, I think we don't know how education is going to be in the future. It definitely can't be what it is today, because I know say what is happening with education today. I'm not going to criticize it in any kind of way, because I am sure that in the days then when Mr. Lowell was going to school, there were people who was probably criticizing education or criticizing things. People was probably saying, "Where you going to go study for? Better you go farm. Better you go do this." And maybe they was right. Maybe they did. Maybe it was supposed to stay. I remember I used to talk to an old man where used to say him grew up on a farm, and him used to be like, say, for example, yeah. So him used to be, for example, one old man used to be sitting down in a bus stop in Bluefields, and this old man, I don't remember his name, you know, he's a old man, and him, I used to like talking to him, you know, and he said to me, he said that him was learning on the farm. They used to teach him out of one book, some star book. I don't remember the name of the book. Okay, but he was telling me, say, that everything where him needed to know was in this book. You know, and it was a very basic book, you know. It was a basic book. Teach how to read, write, and different type of things like that. And so after that, just after them knowledge them, him was able to make himself a farm as a child, as a youth growing up, then teach him out of these books them, and this is what make him to be Mr. Livingston, the man, the name. Mr. Livingston used to sit on in one bus stop, a little old man. And that's what he tell me then. He said that was his education at the time. So if you couple that with the grassroots of where him was as a person, that was all him needed for study and for survive and to support his family and to do everything what him needed to do. You understand me? Now to the day, if you think about it now, children, my people, we hardly even have to teach children how to read anymore. Because from the small, them don't know how to identify the letters them that them have to use to find their video them on YouTube. And nobody teach them these things then. You see what I mean? So that basic knowledge now. So that's why we have to jump past that. We have to find ways how to jump past these things. Them. That's why it's instrumental as to say how it is that we're going to do to could educate our children them so that them could be the ones them to maintain what we are about to deliver to them. That is how we have to, that's how we have to look at things. And the answer is not in anything what we have. All our training them and everything where we ever yet had, we was never prepared for what we are doing and what is to come. That is where we are. That's what this means to me to the day. This is where I is today. And so with that said, there is where we have to keep on and keep moving forward and keep doing what it is where we know so we supposed to do, what we are tasked with them. Because like I said, everybody know their duty. You know, I know my duty. I know what I'm supposed to do. And I'm going to do that with all the diligence and all the integrity that I know that I have. I'm going to do it with as that's all I'm going to do. With all my power within me, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to too much pay mind what the next man have to do or what the next woman have to do. I'm going to pay mind to what I doing. Okay, Susan said, good night, Ariel Hamilton and Deetra Gillette. Give thanks for tuning in. But I most definitely going to do my part. And so that's why I'm glad to even be in presence of people like Deetra, for example. You know, people like CY, you understand me? Where people like Joshua, you understand me? Where do what them need for do diligently. And so we know so that we's part of our team, but everybody have their duty and everybody have their job. And that's why I'm honored to be part of this movement where we and like I said, nobody not prepare we for this. I would have, you know, say like 2 years ago, I never know so we'd even be talking here and having these discussions and things like that. We was already getting prepared for this from before it was getting prepared. So when you see these kind of things, them I would have said and advise, now look to we as leaders or any kind of thing like that. Because all of we have to take responsibility. Leadership now is taking responsibility, and it's our responsibility to build our nation. And we can't look at our nation and Moskitia, our nation as Belize, our nation as United States, or any one of these kind of things. Then we have to look at our nation as Creole nation. We is a Creole nation, and wherever it is where we there is millions away on this earth, millions. We are by no means a minority, but it's where and what it is where we choosing to carry our culture beyond skin color, especially beyond skin color. You understand me? And that's what this recognition tonight here mean to me. I don't know what it mean to Deetra. What it mean to you, Deetra?
Well said. What I keep reflecting upon is generational knowledge. For me, that is what fostered my love for history and to do my own due diligence to discover who we are as people. And I think it's important for everyone to do their own due diligence, not just to rely upon what someone may have wrote or said. If you truly care about your heritage and the sovereignty of your country, and I'm speaking specifically for Belize, but as you said, we're all one people. We have to do our own due diligence, which is an investment of time and energy. I also think as Creole people, as you mentioned, there's a misconception that some have, that you have to be a certain color. You can only be African to identify as Creole. That's not who we are. We're an Afro-Indigenous people, as we highlighted in the presentation earlier, rooted in Moskitia. Many Belizeans share this bloodline as well. And I think it's important that we also continue to foster love for education, which is not you can't be lazy. You have to work for it. And something also that I want to mention is those that are putting in the work, as you highlighted and applauded them. I applaud you, Joshua, people like CY for providing the platform. But we have Glenn, who's also commenting. He has done his due diligence. I'm going to read what he said. I'm interested in knowing what the Creole population is in Nicaragua and also their national dish. Can you answer that, Ariel?
Yeah, most definitely. So our dish in Bluefields would be rundown, that is our national dish where we that say as Creole people, our national dish. So the Creole population, they would be like say like they consider for be African then. You understand me? That's if you go look into the Nicaraguan, if you look into Nicaraguan population and they say what is made up of, they're going to say certain amount is mestizo and certain amount is indigenous and certain amount is Creole. You understand me? And that population, them call it as 9%, more or less. You say 9%. We as Creole people, you're talking about at least about well, I say inside of the country and outside of Moskitia, I would say we get about a good 45,000 people. Inside of Moskitia, the last census them where was done, the most closest estimate is like maybe like a 20,000. With this last migration, because a whole bunch of people migrate, in this last lap, maybe within the last 2 years or so, they open up a immigration parole system. And so plenty of our people once again migrated here to the United States. So of course these things affect. And that's the reason why I said that we cannot by no means limit ourselves to a geographical location, nor to a race, especially. You see what I mean? But yes, continue on, Deetra.
Yeah, what I was saying in regards to education, in a perfect world, we are one people, the human race. But unfortunately, we do have sovereign nations, and those who argue that, why do you live in a house? Why do you have windows? Why do you have a fence around your yard? Unfortunately, we do have to have boundaries with personal space. We have villages, we have cities. It's all organization, and we have countries. But unfortunately, there's a lot of mischief and misinformation out there designed to disenfranchise people, or in a sense, tell people that you're not worthy. Your history is not worth anything. Your ancestors were worthless. They have nothing. They never contributed. They were not smart enough to do so. They were enslaved, so they could. There's no way they could have made an impact on history, which is so far from the truth. Speaking of Belize, and even Moskitia shares this history with that Afro-Indigenous connection, where kings in the region were Afro-Indigenous. But in Belize, defending the area of Belize, we have the Battle of St. George's Key, which happened in 1798. But prior to that, there's numerous accounts, such as the Battle of Laboring Creek, where African ancestors defended the area of Belize. And to hear fellow Creole people discredit that history because they've been so brainwashed to think that Buckingham Palace made up this narrative. It's foolish. It's self-destructive. Meanwhile, we have other people coming into the country that we welcome because we're loving people, accepting people. But when they come into the country, they're not trying to learn about the foundation of Belize. They're coming and imposing their views and their history and their narrative onto the country. And and there's also people that do this. It's a tactic not only to disenfranchise, but when you disenfranchise a group of people, it's to replace it with something or someone else, an agenda. So if people truly love their country, in the case of Belize, there's people that come to Belize for a sense of security and freedom, but yet they don't put forth the effort to learn about the history and why we're an English-speaking country, or why we have freedom, why we are, to our core, our baseline, we're peaceful people. They're not trying to learn that. And that's something that we all should be questioning with our historical Creole events. We have the Flowers Bank celebration coming up on June 1st. It's usually just a handful of people within the education department from the River Valley that supports these type of events. But the whole nation should be doing so, because those events are the foundation of Belize, with those votes to defend the settlement and also defending the settlement. Belize would not exist if these events did not happen. So thus, going back to education, why it's important, if we respect the sovereignty of our nations, our foundations, those ancestors who put forward a fight, and pretty much they were saying, I'm willing to risk my life, willing to risk it all for this. There should be a sense of appreciation, or as you say, Ariel, giving thanks. And that, asserting that, is not divisive. Mexico honors their colonial past. Latin America honors their colonial past. The Caribbean countries do. We're not trying to honor a colonial past. We were there before the colonial system. We're asking that our history be honored, and the impact and influence that we've had on the world. And another point that I missed out, going back to those reverends who were in Moskitia, two of them who were directly linked to the Church of England and the mission. Let me see here. They noted that Negro and mulattoes were very apt to learn and can read the New Testament, and others can spell words for 4 or 5 syllables, and can repeat the Lord's Prayer, Creed, and they learned this all within 4 months. And I'm sharing this because it shows how intelligent our ancestors were to learn how to read within 4 months. But going back to that early mission of the SPG, there were 2 men who many may recognize their name. One was Thomas Clarkson, and the other was William Wilberforce. And these men also campaigned in Britain to abolish the slave trade in the West Indies. And they also were humanitarians. They were on a mission to humanize Negroes, or the African descendants, and indigenous people through human rights. And their Slave Trade Act of 1809 was passed, in 1807, which essentially ended the British slave trade in the West Indies and their colonies. Mind you, it continued on in Northern America. And I'm sharing this because there also seems to be a prejudice. Yes, European countries are not innocent. No one is. If we're going back to a time in the 1700s and the 1600s and the 1500s and the 1400s, everyone was guilty of of inhumanity. You know, going back to Africa, the different tribes that sold their fellow men out into slavery, or rival tribes that would kidnap each other, guilty, you know. The Spanish and the Catholic Church, who endorsed the papal bull and the line of demarcation, which essentially brought the Spanish and Portuguese to this side of the world to colonize it, because these people were not Christian. And then the transatlantic slave trade that followed, that was all endorsed by Spain and the Catholic Church. People don't want to hear that. But especially in Belize, they want to blame Britain for everything. In Britain, yeah, they were not innocent. But when doing research and educating oneself, you have to kind of look at it in a clean slate without prejudice and look at the facts. And I'm a firm believer in giving credit where credit is due. And I'm saying this because there has been a prejudice with Creole people in Belize. Specifically, I don't know if this is the case in Moskitia or other parts of Moskitia, that Creoles are a product of colonialism. We're trying to honor our colonialism and British heritage. When we speak about it or research it or share information about it. But we Creole people don't do that to anyone else. We don't tell them that they have to deny aspects of themselves or their history to be human. And I'm just putting the information out there. I hope it's food for thought for people to start doing more due diligence with research and not listening to these radical narratives, many of which are not factual. I hope something I said inspires someone, some listener.
Give thanks. So, well, we're going to call it that and make it a wrap because the time has come. We are here until 7 o'clock Moskitia time, right? 7 o'clock Moskitia time. Once again, we want to say give thanks. We get a message from Joshua. Joshua said that have no electricity all evening. So right there with the sabotage, you know what I mean? It's the same kind of things that we're talking about. These is the kind of things that we have to overstep, you know. Steve Trapp said, why did they migrate to the US and not Belize? It's a very interesting question, because I might have you all, you know, think about something here as that question come up then. Nicaragua, the country we name Nicaragua, where I have to keep on saying I don't consider myself to be a part of Nicaragua. That's why I am a Moskitian. I come from Moskitia. That's my country. That's where I come from. And when what Nicaragua do is Nicaragua was kicking out the people them, like say the government were in power right now. Them kick out the people them out of the country, where oppose them, kick them out of the country and take away their nationality. You know, which right now, just a couple of days ago, them eliminate the dual citizenship law. So then if you become a citizen, so people were from Moskitia, we used to believe that them is Nicaragua, right? Now them is not Nicaragua no more, if them is American. Just put it in a kind of perspective. But when them kick out their own people out of their country, the one them will oppose them, they lock them up in jail, kick them out of the country. And when they kick them out of the country now, then next country start offering them citizenship. So for example, Mexico offer the Spaniard people, the Mestizo people, citizenship. Spain offer, countries in South America offer. You understand me? And there is where a good thing where the brethren Steve Trapp asked the question, why is it that they not come to Belize, you see? For whatever reason, you see, that's where our work, that's where we have to put our work in. You see, because we is one people. And I said to my people all the time, if they kick we out of the country, where are we going to get citizenship from? Spain not going to recognize we. England not going to recognize we. You understand me? It should have been a way where we shouldn't even have to worry about anything. We just go Belize. We just go San Andres. Because we's all one people. But because we demarcated with lines, that's why them line them we have to erase, my people. Especially for we have to be that example in the world where erase borderline between we, where we is people, we is one people. We have to disseminate them, border them, and make ourselves to be one people, one nation of people. And we're going to leave it to that. So give thanks, my people. Give thanks for joining we here. Give thanks for being here with us. Remember, say, on Wednesday nights, you could check out G Mike, okay, and C Smoke. Starting 8 o'clock Eastern, 9 o'clock Eastern time. G Mike and C Smoke. 9 o'clock Eastern time, right here. Also on Friday nights, you could check out the brethren Samurai, who is also C Smoke with CY 5. C Smoke 5.0. That is 8 o'clock Eastern time. All right. See it there on the screen. Give thanks, my people. Give thanks, CY. We are very, very appreciative of you, brother. All right. And with that, we say blessing and give thanks.
Good night.
Easy squeeze, make no riot. So they make noise easy. See why alongside Wavy and my boy, YG. We don't need no gimmick for to make the lyrics popular. We don't need no fire pan, no stick, make it ball like a wig. Gonna jump up in the air, sound by beat where we fling bout the lyrics like fear. We don't need no gimmick for to make the lyrics popular. We don't need no fire pan, no stick, make it ball like a wig. Gonna jump up in the air, sound by beat where we fling bout the lyrics like fear. Music doesn't know it's gone and a toy. Some boy me telling us you no must realize. Me like the words out of my mouth is changed. Some of your lyrics that I forget rearrange. You don't be money get that hotter than pepper when you sing. Why you have to this song so bitter? You get opportunity with that responsibility to achieve reality. We don't need no gimmick to make the lyrics popular. We don't need no fire pan, no stick, make it ball like a wig. Gonna jump up in the air, sound by beat where we fling bout the lyrics like fear. We don't need no gimmick for to make the lyrics popular. We don't need no fire pan, no stick, make it ball like a wig. Gonna jump up in the air, sound by beat where we fling bout the lyrics like fear. Violence prevention, that with a mention. Why you have to spit with so much bad intention? So I'm gonna say it, social GB. What's the seed far close to the G? You know, say retire that is negativity. Plus, you stay the complaint. Even though you have dollars, they fall like rain. Still want drive in another man lane. No shit. You don't need no gimmick for to make the lyrics popular. You don't need no fire pan, no stick, make it ball like a wig. Gonna jump up in the air, sound by beat where we fling bout the lyrics like fear. We don't need no gimmick for to make the lyrics popular. We don't need no fire pan, no stick, make it ball like a wig. Gonna jump up in the air, sound by beat where we